Hi, strangers. It has been a while. In fact, it's been so long that I feel like I don't know what to do in front of this camera right now. But I'm going to do my best. So, hi, if you've never seen my face before, my name is Kayla, and this is my space to talk about all things horror, books, movies, etc. I don't know what etc. would be. If that's something that sounds interesting to you, I hope that you will consider subscribing. If you are someone who has been here for a while, hi, thank you for the support. I had to take a little bit of a hiatus. I had a close family member pass away. So I've just been taking some time to, be with my family and gather myself so I can shift to a new normal, I suppose, because, that's what grief does. So while I was spending time with my family, I grabbed probably the best book to deal with grief, which is Shared by Two. Shared by Two by Jon Athan. The reason I'm obviously joking about it being a good book for grief, but tell me if you can relate to this. Whenever something particularly distressing is going on for me in my life, I tend to reach for things that are more distressing than that to get my mind off of it. And I think that's, being a fan of horror in particular, I don't necessarily like to go to true crime for that because I don't like to think about, I don't want to ease my suffering by looking at someone else's real actual suffering and being like, wow, at least that's not me, because that's terrible. And I would like to retain some modicum of empathy for other human beings. So this book looked interesting to me. I wanted to try out something by Jon Athan, see if I liked his stuff. And this premise grabbed me. So it was published on March 30th, 2023. So not that long ago, not even a year ago. And from his website, he says, Shared by Two is a psychological horror novel with an extreme edge. It's about an extreme horror author and his biggest fan. Boundaries and obsession and all that good, horrifying stuff. It's a very personal story. So you'll see shades of me in it. If you like stalker stories and novels from me like Dead Body Disposal, this one is for you. As I mentioned earlier, this is a personal story. It is not a direct response, but it was a way for me to address all of the backlash I had received from certain groups for publishing certain books. That feels like if you know kind of a thing, which I kind of have an idea. But he says, if you frequent social media groups, you probably know which one of my books gets so many people riled up. If you enjoy it, please leave an honest review when you get the chance. Sure. I'm happy to oblige. So I liked this book well enough. Here's Clover. I liked this book well enough. My overall rating's a 3.5 out of 5. If you're at all familiar with my toilet paper comparison in terms of rating scales, 3.5 ply toilet paper is pretty fucking good toilet paper, right? So this is not a bad book. And definitely if anything that I say piques your interest, I think you should check it out. I think that Jon Athan is really good at building suspense and writing action scenes. The extreme horror elements of this book really had me squirming in my seat. There was a particular scene where something happens to someone's eyeball, and I felt like I was going to pass out just from reading it. It was really brutal. I appreciate that he used a personal experience to further explore this interesting and frankly quite prevalent topic of parasocial relationships and the ways in which they can get out of control. Specifically, I liked hearing his perspective on the other side as an author, right? Because we hear or we witness parasocial relationships from fans of people or followers of people. We don't necessarily get to hear what it's like from the other side. So what I didn't like, his writing style was not my favorite, but that's really it. And that doesn't necessarily mean anything bad. So as a writer, I have been just testing out some editing adjacent software. So I plugged a couple of passages into Pro Writing Aid just out of curiosity. And it picked up on the same things that I did, which was validating, such as like what stood out to me was the shorter sentence structure and kind of like odd use of the speaker pronouns. So he'd identify people by their profession, such as like the author said or the painter asked, which I've never really seen done before, but that doesn't mean it's not good for any reason. And none of this made the writing bad, in my opinion. I think it's just me, my personal preference. I remember way back in high school reading Ernest Hemingway, and I think I remember having the same issue with him. Like the sentence structure felt so like abrupt and short that I just wasn't particularly a fan of his. But to say that due to that one aspect, Ernest Hemingway is not a good writer would be insanity, right? Like he's obviously a celebrated American author. So here's a brief summary of the story. Nestor Cassel is a former extreme horror author who recently pivoted to projects he is more passionate about, such as historical fiction with horror elements. For this, he has received backlash from some of his fans, including pleas to return to the extreme horror genre. A fan who goes by the name Butterfly, however, takes this to the next level, relating to Nestor in a way that goes above and beyond parasocial. I could tell pretty early on when I was reading this book that it was personal because Nestor Cassel, I don't know a ton about Jon Athan other than the fact that he's a guy and he writes extreme horror. But this particular author that he's writing about, has those things in common with him that really stood out. I mean, pivoting from extreme horror to other genres. I mean, this book in and of itself, I wouldn't describe as strictly extreme horror. Obviously, he didn't either. This is more of like a thriller. Jon Athan has written a bunch of thrillers. Some of his other books include The Groomer and Into the Wolves' Den. Both of them, I think, are thrillers. I haven't read either of them, but I think that those are the books that he's talking about when he mentions the backlash that he's been getting. Both of those have to do with child SA. And I think the not twist to them, but I think the perspective that it's coming from in both of those novels is kind of like a vigilante justice. So both The Groomer and Into the Wolves' Den take on that vigilante justice aspect in telling these stories about these awful things that we all know do actually happen, don't want to think about it, right? Aren't thrilled at all that it's happening. And he explores this narratively in a way that like people fantasize about, right? Like you hear about someone hurting children and like how many people say when you watch a news story that they caught like a PDF file, they should give that guy the chair or something like that, right? People hate people who abuse children, as they should, right? Those people are scum of the earth. But he's not, for getting backlash for this kind of thing's interesting because he's not like saying that it's okay. He's not glamorizing it. He's not even writing a sympathetic character that engages in these things. He's literally writing about people who take down individuals like this. So it's interesting that he got backlash about it. The other thing I can think of is that he goes into graphic detail about these things that we really don't want to think about. So as this book goes on, we are kind of left to guess what is going on. And he drops a couple of red herrings, which I appreciate. One of the things that he mentions is that Nestor has like a mental health problem. And so I want to share with you a couple of my incorrect guesses as to what was going on. So number one was a mental health episode. So it was mentioned that Nestor has schizoid personality disorder. But I want to point out for Jon Athan and other authors that this actually, what this actually might look like, because Nestor didn't really fit the bill, in my opinion. But I do appreciate that this wasn't used as a twist, so to speak, because using mental illness for horror to villainize people, especially, is really gross and poorly done. I want to say it was mentioned very briefly in the book, and it was neither stereotyped nor expanded upon. Like, it was just kind of dropped, he had this problem with mental illness. He doesn't have it anymore. This was the specific problem that he had. There was no other detail given. So I have for you my baby little pocket copy of the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Health. This is how we diagnose people in mental health, okay? We just call it the DSM. I don't even, what does it stand for? I don't even know at this point. Okay, so schizoid personality disorder is part of the cluster A group of personality disorders. Now, personality disorder is a disorder of the personality, so it presents a lot differently from, say, a mood disorder like depression or bipolar disorder, or anxiety disorder, PTSD. So here's the diagnostic criteria for schizoid personality disorder. A pervasive pattern of detachment from social relationships and a restricted range of emotions, of expression of emotions in interpersonal settings, beginning by early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts, as indicated by 4 or more of the following. 1, neither my cat is like losing her shit. I don't know if you can hear it in the background. Neither desires nor enjoys close relationships, including being part of a family. 2, almost always chooses solitary activities. 3, has little, if any, interest in having sexual experiences with another person. 4, takes pleasure in few, if any, activities. 5, lacks close friends or confidants other than first-degree relatives. 6, appears indifferent to the praise or criticism of others. 7, shows emotional coldness, detachment, or flattened affectivity. B, it does not occur exclusively during the course of schizophrenia, a bipolar disorder or depressive disorder with psychotic features, another psychotic disorder or autism spectrum disorder, and is not attributable to the physiological effects of another medical condition. So I think that when people kind of lay people, and I'm not trying to, get on my high horse saying that, but you're not a trained professional, right? That's okay. You're not supposed to know any of this jargon or what any of this means. When lay people kind of try to describe somebody who's dealing with symptoms like hallucinations and delusions, potentially, they're always like, oh, schizophrenia. That person has schizophrenia. That's schizophrenia. Schizophrenia exists on a spectrum. Let's start there. And second of all, psychosis is what you're looking for, because psychoses, such as those positive symptoms of schizophrenia, hallucinations, delusions, things like that, are part of psychosis. And psychosis is a part of schizophrenia, but it can occur in bipolar disorder. It can occur on its own. There's such thing as postpartum psychosis, for example, after someone gives birth. It can occur with trauma, with grief, right? Luckily, I'm not having a psychotic episode. So I think that's probably what he was going for and didn't realize the distinction between two of those. I could be completely wrong. I don't know. I'm not in his head, thank God. But the schizoid and schizotypal personality disorders, really, the focus of most personality disorders is on how the individual's interpersonal relationships are affected. Most of the criteria focuses on that. So as you could tell, these diagnostic criteria of schizoid personality disorder are present in people with schizophrenia, but schizoid personality disorder does not include those positive symptoms of psychosis, such as hallucinations and delusions, things that people always think of. Schizotypal personality disorder is more along the lines of like bizarre beliefs, bizarre presentation, strange ways of dressing and like presenting self. Authors, get at me if you want some mental health consultation before you publish a story. I'm not going to do it for free, but I'll do it. But like I said, I mean, he's not demonizing anybody here. He barely even expanded on it. The only reason I think that this doesn't line up with this character is because this character seems to really enjoy the relationships that he has with the people in his life. He's married, he has a daughter, he really cherishes them, he's engaged with his fans, he has a publisher. He has an agent that he works with pretty closely. So he has these relationships, so it doesn't really line up. But anyways, moving on. The other thing I thought that might have been happening was Folie à Deux. Folie à Deux? That new movie that's coming out with Lady Gaga in The Joker, Harley Quinn. Folie à Deux is a delusion shared by two people. So the novel is called Shared by Two. So I was like, okay, well, maybe that's where we're heading here. By the way, that is not in the current DSM due to insufficient or inadequate criteria. So it's not it's one of those things, I think, where we're kind of like, is it a real thing? Is it just like a rare phenomenon? Is it neurological? Is it psychological? We don't know. So it's not in the DSM. I've never heard of anyone having it. Really, there's probably those rare 1 or 2 cases that made headlines. Oh, the other, I'm looking through my highlights and I'm looking at, because I highlight, the way that I annotate books is I like to kind of pick out things that I like or dislike about narrative, plot, character development, things like that. And here's an example of what I didn't like in terms of writing. So this is in chapter 3, page 29. He picked up a water bottle from a floor next to his seat. He was about to unscrew the cap when he realized the bottle was already empty. Big beads of cold sweat trickled down his face. He was tempted to lick it off his lips just to moisturize his mouth a little, but his mind was tortured by what ifs. Here's another example. Here's another thing that I highlighted. Page 33. So later on in this chapter, the call ended. Nestor grabbed his laptop bag from the passenger seat, then climbed out of the vehicle. He followed the bluestone walkway fringed with bushes from the driveway to the porch. He checked the mailbox next to the front door. Empty. He entered the house, set his bag down on the bench next to an umbrella basket to his left, then hung his coat up from the rack, hanging on the wall above it. Not bad writing, right? So like, it's not bad writing. What I don't like about it is like, I don't need a play-by-play of what your character is doing. You can tell me, like, Kayla was sitting on the couch. She realized she was thirsty. She stood up. She turned to the right. She turned to the left. She moved towards the kitchen. She got a glass of water. Wait, she opened the cabinet. She got a glass. Like, you can just say, it dawned on Kayla as she was sitting there how thirsty she was. So she got up and went to get a glass of water from the kitchen. Like, I get it. I've been thirsty. I've needed a glass of water before. So like, I know what's going on there. When I plugged his writing into Pro Writing Aid, I believe they marked it at a grade 4, which is not bad, right? Because when you're writing, and I learned this from Pro Writing Aid, when you're writing, you want to write to about grade 7, because most Americans anyways, and say what you want about the American education system based on this, but most Americans can read at grade 7. Like, that is our literacy level. So if you want most people to be able to read your book, you want to write at grade level 7 or somewhere around there. Not too much higher, not too much lower. So grade 4 is fine. My writing, when I plugged it in, was at a grade 6. So like, not that much different. Rare that you're going to find people like, say, George R.R. Martin, who probably writes at a grade 15 or something like that, because I could barely follow along what was going on, and I have a master's degree. So he has a bit of an afterword, which is titled Dear Reader, and I always appreciate that because I like to know where the author's mind was when they were writing the book. And he talks kind of about where his idea for this book came from, not necessarily like this direct personal experience he had, and how extreme horror, he says, can be therapeutic. He's received requests to write about people's greatest fears because that can be corrective for them, I guess. It can be cathartic. He says, some of the letters in this story were inspired by messages, comments, and even reviews from real readers. I've talked about the harassment I've received from writing The Groomer in the past. People like to assume the worst, fabricate my intentions, and attack me personally when it comes to this book. I've received harassment for others too, and no, I'm not confusing criticism for abuse. I've always welcomed negative reviews. Just look back at my letters in my older books. I'll be honest, I generally don't read my negative reviews these days, but they helped me become the writer I am now. And I really appreciate that perspective because he's right. Like, negative reviews aren't fun to receive, obviously. But if you're smart, you will take the constructive criticism and use it to become a better writer. And it's totally fair to be upset, in my opinion, at negative reviews that are like stupid and give us nothing. I mean, I totally agree with what people say in terms of like reviewers don't owe the authors anything. But when I go to Goodreads and the reviews on a book are just like, oh my God, this is disgusting. I can't believe someone wrote this. DNF, 1 star. It's like, go Queen, give us nothing. Like, how do I know what the content of the book is? What in particular did you not like about it? Like, Did you not know from the cover or like the warning on the front what you were getting into? I don't understand how that's supposed to be helpful to anyone. You're just kind of like vomiting onto your keyboard. And it is not okay, in my opinion, to read this content, go into a book and read this kind of content and make these, like, paint the authors with a broad brush. To say Jon Athan wrote about melon balling someone's eye out. So that means that he supports melon balling people's eyes out and he's a terrible person. And one of the things that I see people say about extreme horror authors all the time is they need to look at this person's computer and this person needs to be locked up, because what other kind of person comes up with these things than someone who is sick and depraved and dangerous? And I'll tell you what kind of people think of these things. You do. I do. We all do. Like, we all have the capacity to think of these dark and frightening things. And for most of us, that thought may be swatted away pretty quickly. But let's not pretend that we're all like these perfect angels who never think about anything bad and never have intrusive thoughts. We just don't act on them 99.9% of the time, or 99.9% of us don't act on them, I should say. And for some people, they think of these things and this is how they process them. They write about them, or they paint, or they, I don't know, how else do you process things? They talk to their friends about it, and then their friends are like, you should be locked up. You should get your computer searched. Yes, this is a Stanley Cup. I punched out a woman in Target for it. Just kidding. It's whatever this brand is. For $15. I'm not paying $50 for a cup, you fucking nuts. Because back to what I was saying before, there are definitely extreme horror authors that I don't particularly like. I'm not interested in reading their work. I think as people, they're kind of shitty, but that's based on their behavior outside of what they write. It is not because of what they write. So he also says in the Dear Reader, if you need help writing your review, you can answer questions like these. Did you enjoy the story? I think I answered that. Were the characters interesting, relatable, or memorable? Yes. I think the only character that I would have liked to be a little bit more fleshed out was, I forgot her name, but Nestor's wife. The wife's name is Mina. And it says, it reminded Mina of when she used to be afraid of the dark as a child. Tell me more. I want to know more about her background. So this story is written in third person omniscient. So we know what's going on inside of everybody's head. So it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for us to learn a little bit more background about Mina. Or any of the other side characters in the story, because she is an important character here. Okay. Did you like the ending? Did I like the ending? Well, I don't want to give the ending away for people who might be interested in reading this. Yes, I did like the ending. It was giving Silence of the Lambs. That's all I'll say. Would you like to read another extreme horror novel with similar themes from Jon Athan? No, but only because I would like to read. I just want to see what he's done with other themes and other ideas. I am interested in reading more of his books. Hey everyone. So I was taking a look at what I recorded last night in the second half of the video, which is about I wanted to explore parasocial relationships in it. So I've been trying to find a balance between like having a script written out and then just like talking to you and talking to this camera freely. And it turns out my ADHD ass needs some sort of structure. So I went back, I put together some bullet points in terms of what I actually want to say about parasocial relationships so that I can give you some more organized points to talk about and relate them back to this book. So I'm wearing a different outfit. It's daytime. It's a whole different day. My camera angle's a little bit different. I'm trying something new. I think I'm going to record the first part of another video in a little bit after this. But let's get down to brass tacks. So the first type of parasocial relationship that I want to cover, Clover has been losing her shit right now, by the way. It's like an hour and a half before I feed her, and she likes to annoy the snot out of me when it gets close to dinner time. So first, let's talk about the fans to the personality dynamic. So that's kind of what Jon Athan explores in Shared by Two. He's talking about a fan that feels entitled to this creator's time and energy, and he feels entitled to kind of dictate what this creator writes about and give him like uncalled for feedback about the content that he writes about, up to, threatening him, stalking him, sending him these stories that are like about his family, about things happening to his family that are pretty disturbing. So we're talking about fans to personality. Enter Doja Cat and her fans. I don't remember what they call themselves, kittens or something like that. So Doja's come under a lot of fire in the last, I don't know, has it been a year? Has it been a few months? I don't really follow what Doja Cat does. I like her music, but I don't really pay attention to what she does as a human being. Getting some more succinct, on-point information, she did an interview with Teen Vogue where she talks about her relationship with her fans and refutes ever saying that she hates them, because that's kind of the accusation that people have been making about her. So the article says, the controversy started after the rapper criticized her fan base for calling themselves kittens with a Z. Writing in a since-deleted Threads post, if you call yourself a kitten or fucking kittens, that means you need to get off your phone and get a job and help your parents with the house, which I think is kind of funny, honestly. When a fan asked her to say that she loved her fans, Doja Cat replied, I don't though, because I don't even know y'all. Several stan accounts dedicated to Doja Cat also deleted their accounts. But was she wrong? She goes on to say in the same interview, my theory is that if someone has never met me in real life, then subconsciously I'm not real to them. And here's cat number 2. So she goes on to say in the same interview, my theory is that if someone has never met me in real life, then subconsciously I'm not real to them, which is really interesting to hear, a media figure say. So when people become engaged with someone they don't even know on the internet, they kind of take ownership over that person. They think that person belongs to them in some sense. And when that person changes drastically, there's a shock response that is almost uncontrollable. I've accepted that that's what happens. Think of all of the pop stars, especially, that have changed their image over the years, right? They've tried out different kinds of music. They've changed their aesthetic, their style of dress, the people that they associate with, the causes that they support. And there's always outcry over fans, right? Like when Taylor Swift switched over from country, people were really upset about that. But what Doja Cat's saying is essentially you don't have a right to tell an artist what they do with their work and what themes they play with, how they decide to create. So example number 2 is SZA and a fan. I don't know if I would call her a fan, but a person that was attending one of her concerts posted a picture of her Instagram story, which said SZA whack. And she put it up on Instagram, and SZA replied. For those of you who don't know, SZA is a singer, and if you haven't listened to her album SOS, you're missing out. It's a really good album. But anyways, SZA replied to this, and she said, I don't think you realize how fucked up that actually is and how hurtful it was back then, because this woman who posted it on her Instagram was referencing something that had happened a while ago. And SZA says, it ruined my confidence and desire to perform live. Y'all not human and it's sad. Really wish you the best. Love. And I guess they went back and forth in DMs. And then this girl is bragging about that. SZA comes out and talks about how these kind of comments ruin her mental health and impacted her emotionally and creatively. And she's essentially saying, did you forget that I'm a person here? Did you forget you're talking about a human being here? And personally, in my opinion, it was really gross that this person was that brazen about bullying someone, essentially. She said she deleted it because she was embarrassed, and good, she should be. So those are 2 examples, but fans hounding personalities goes up to and including stalkers, which if any of you have ever experienced stalking, I have. It's very frightening. It's life-changing. It's not a fun experience. And what I experienced wasn't even like a modicum of what some people experience in terms of stalking. But for example, a long time ago, Jodie Foster's stalker, John Hinckley Jr., made an attempt to assassinate Ronald Reagan in order to win her love. And like, say what you will about Ronald Reagan. We know he's in the bad place. Okay? He's in the bad place. But poor Jodie Foster, like imagine having that on your mind that someone wanted to harm another human being for you when you don't even know them and you didn't ask them to and you don't want them to. And I'm sure Jodie Foster is like a nice person and she doesn't want that to happen to anybody. I can't, like, that's insanity. Bjork, some of you may know, Bjork had a stalker who mailed her I don't know if I can say it on YouTube, something that you don't want to say in an airport either, BOMB. The idea was to end Bjork's life. He made a series of videos that I don't recommend, but you can find them online, where he goes on and on about his love for Bjork. And when at the end of it, he unalives himself, thinking, you know, we'll be together. Me and Bjork will be like, again, you're going to the bad place. Bjork is an Icelandic angel. You are not on the same level. Never would be, never will be. Then another dynamic, a parasocial dynamic we can look at is fans of a media personality to other people, whether they be other fans or other groups of people. So who is in every corner of every sphere of everything right now? Everywhere you turn, you see their name, you see their face, you hear their music. It's Dr. Taylor Allison Swift. Listen, I'm a Swiftie, but some of these fans are fucking unhinged. And we can certainly have a conversation about how there's a lot of misogyny and criticism of Taylor Swift's fans because her fan base is mostly young women. And so when they're doing things like dancing at her movie concert, the criticism is, look, they're in a cult. They look like they're in a cult. Meanwhile, you've got grown-ass men painting their entire bodies the colors of their sports team and beating the crap out of each other or like their family members when their sports team loses. And that's totally normal behavior, apparently. So Taylor Swift's fans are dedicated, to say the least. One pretty disturbing example of that is Chris Piniella, who works for Business Insider. He wrote an article, and the title is "Taylor Swift fans sent me death threats, doxed my family, and accused me of being a PDF file after I criticized her Eras tour." I believe that Chris is a gay man, and part of what he received were messages filled with anti-gay slurs. He says, "The worst came when a group of Swifties tried to mass email my boss and get me fired, which included starting rumors that I was a groomer and a PDF file. It was a shocking echo of a far-right talking point being peddled against LGBTQ plus people. Why all the harassment? I wrote a story that gently criticized Taylor Swift's Eras tour. My actual review, which compared Taylor Swift's Eras tour and Beyoncé's Renaissance World Tour, was quite positive. Eras is a true greatest hits show with an incredible feat, even if it sometimes falls flat. I preferred the cohesion, themes, production, and community of Renaissance." That sounds like a really fair review, right? Like, I watched Eras tour with my 9-year-old niece, who is just now becoming a Taylor Swift fan, and she was like, we were like 45 minutes into it, and she was like, I'm out. She had other things to do. He also goes on to talk about stan culture and the origin of the word stan, which people who perhaps were very young or not alive yet when the song Stan, I think it's just called Stan, right, by Eminem, maybe they don't know, but that song does not paint a fan in a positive light. Like, it's not a glowing review of what it means to be a good fan to Eminem or anybody else. So to call someone a stan is to say that they're obsessive in a negative way. Like, it's not a positive thing, technically. But yeah, I mean, this happens with Swifties a lot, right? That they go to bat for her like she's their friend, but she doesn't know them. She doesn't know who they are. She doesn't know their names. She has probably the best lawyers in the world. She doesn't need anyone to defend her. She's probably not aware of like 75% of the criticism that she gets online. I say that only because I think she's secretly extremely online, and I think that she pays a lot of attention to when her name is dropped. I feel like she gets like spidey senses or something like that, and so that she can feed into it and like monetize it, right? And that's the other thing, is that people don't realize that Taylor Swift's relatability is all part of her marketing and her PR. And I jokingly call her capitalist Barbie, right? Like, she is into making money. She's a billionaire. She's achieved that. Like, she's a really great businesswoman. She's a good musician, right? But people don't realize that this connection that they feel is by design. Like, they were meant to feel that way about her. But generally, they, hardcore Swifties lose their shit, defend Taylor even over the most justified criticism, including dating Ratty Healy. Not a fan. And the overuse of her private jet. Like, we can't overlook that. You're going to jump on a private jet just to visit your boyfriend? Okay. And then the last dynamic I wanted to explore was the media personality themselves to the fans. And the reason why this is problematic is because it's taking advantage of that parasocial relationship that, again, is part of marketing and is part of, it's part of PR. It's by design, right? So very recently, in the last couple of weeks, the horror author J.D. Barker has been in a lot of hot water for sending this marketing email to a lot of young women on Book Talk, asking them to post about his book. And so, that's not a strange thing. The idea is to influence people to purchase it, get a buzz going around to this book. Which in and of itself is not a bad idea, right? He offered to compensate them, on and on. And the problem came in when there were suggestions about how they could do that. So one of the suggestions that I think everybody kind of latched onto was that you could post a video that pans the length of your body with only the book covering your naughty bits. Are we adults, or like what? As well as, videos where you mention like in a very cheeky way, the most risky place that you've had sex, things like that, calling yourself, here's what I look like when I'm sugar. Here's what I look like when I'm spice, because I think that's the game that this couple plays in the book that he just wrote. Now, this is a man who has several published books. This is the first time I've ever heard of him, was in this controversy, which, hey, maybe that's by design too, right? This book that he's trying to market right now has already been in talks to become a film. So like, this guy's not struggling. And I'm going to say this allegedly, in my opinion, but it sounds like he was taking advantage. Luna really wants to be in this video. It sounds like he was taking advantage of the power differential that exists between a personality and their fans, right? So other examples of this, every lead singer of every band that I listened to when I was 15. It seems like emo bands in particular have an unfortunate history of trying to take advantage of their underage fans, teenage girls mostly. Except the only exception I can think of is Gerard Way, another angel. He's an angel. I don't think he would ever do something like that, but I don't know. I don't know him, right? Like, who knows? So that's it on my little spiel about parasocial relationships. There's really nothing good that comes out of them. And I think it sounds like Jon Athan has experienced some of the particularly bad aspects of fans who have a parasocial relationship with you when you become a creator. And he used this book to process that experience. And I thought it was really interesting, like I said before, to hear about this and learn about it from his perspective and to see what that was like. So since this is a video about books, I wanted to just share with you the book I'm currently reading, Unwind by Neil Shusterman. I'm not loving it. It's not terrible. I'm going to finish it. I'm a little more than halfway done. And then I wanted to share my most recent book haul, which is a whopping 2 books. I've got Between Two Fires by Christopher Buhlman, an epic tale of medieval horror. The back cover copy says, "Let us rise against him now in all our numbers and pull the walls of heaven down." That's a quote, I'm assuming from the book. A brutal night offered one final chance at salvation. A troubled priest, last survivor of his parish, drowning himself in wine and guilt. A young girl orphaned by the Black Death, obeying the commands of angels both terrible and beautiful. This trio will undertake a journey across a medieval French countryside decimated by war and plague, encountering along the way martyrs and saints, brigands and fools, the damned and their hellish masters. They have little chance to save mankind, but they might, just might, save their own souls. This has really, really great reviews. People seem to be raving about this book, so I'm really excited to read it, even though she's thick. Like, that's a lot more book than I usually read because I have a poor attention span. So under 200 pages is great. You can finish it, can move on to the next one. But I am really looking forward to this. I've never read a medieval horror before. I think it's going to be really interesting. The other book I've got, This Thing Between Us by Gus Moreno. Again, I've heard really good things about this book. It's not as big. It's a lot shorter. So the back cover copy says, "Ever since Vera and Tiago brought the Itza, life has gotten strange. The ads for the world's most advanced smart speaker didn't mention scratching in the walls, airy music in the dead of night, or peculiar packages. Who ordered the industrial strength lie? It's weird but amusing, right up until Vera is killed and Tiago's world becomes unbearable. The only thing left to do is to get as far away from Chicago as possible. But Tiago soon realizes there is no escape. Not from his guilt, not from his anger, not from the evil hunting him, feeding on his pain, looking for a way into this world. And a startling, darkly funny horror novel about grief and rage, the loneliness of living between cultures, and the all-too-real oppressive intimacy of technology, Gus Moreno's This Thing Between Us marks the arrival of a spectacular new talent." You know, this explores grief. I thought it was probably a good foray into processing my own grief. A little bit of techno horror. I'm hoping it doesn't disappoint like the last couple of forays I had into techno horror. But again, really great reviews. Can't wait to read it. That's my TBR. My TBR is 3 books this month. Unwind, already reading it. And the 2 that I just showed you. My goal for the year is to read 26 books. Not that many, because I'm not really a big reader. I don't spend a lot of time reading, I should say. I love reading, and I love books, and I love writing, but I don't spend a lot of time reading. So that's going to be it for this video. Let me know what you think. Did you read this book? Did you like it? What are your thoughts on parasocial relationships? Do we have a parasocial relationship? Do you feel like we could be friends? Are we friends? Are we going to go for coffee? Let me know in the comments. Leave a like, subscribe, do the thing. I forgot how to end a video, but I will see you in the next one. Bye.